Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I cannot be here in person. My name is Marie Mourad, and I wrote a book in French called De la poubelle à l'assiette, which translates as From Dumpsters to Dinners, 10 Years of Fighting Food Waste in France and the United States. The book is based on my PhD research and what I've learned through my work as a consultant for nonprofits and government organizations in France and the US. Today, I want to share some results about the evolution of public policies against food waste in France and in California, as well as challenges and opportunities to improve the solutions against food waste. So why food waste? What got me interested in food waste initially was dumpster diving, which means finding food in the trash, during a first trip to New York in 2012. And now I live in the city, and you can still open trash bags directly on the sidewalk and find hundreds of bagels or dozens of cheeses. And that's what I found really shocking or puzzling at the beginning. And these are just examples of products dumpster dived in New York City recently. But in developed countries, it's estimated that we waste more than 30% of our food during the production, distribution, and consumption stages. And this doesn't even include products that are not even harvested. It's difficult to measure food waste, but in France, we estimate that we waste 150 kilos per person and per year, which represents 15 million tons of CO2 equivalent, and could be 240 euros per person and per year. So what can we do, and what has been done so far? France has taken a position of leader over the last 10 years with a national pact against food waste as early as 2012. And the pact led to a national law in 2016 called the Loi Garot, which made it mandatory for large supermarkets to set up partnerships with nonprofit organizations to donate their food. It is also forbidden to destroy edible food, for example, by putting bleach on the food to destroy dumpster divers. The law was often portrayed as a complete ban on food waste, and it does include sanctions, but these have not really been enforced so far, and the law relies mostly on voluntary commitments from businesses. Additional regulations also require donors to sort the food and only donate what is in good quality, and to donate more than 2 days before the expiration dates, so that the organizations taking the food have enough time to redistribute it. In 2018 and 2020, similar obligations were extended to other sectors, such as wholesalers, food manufacturers, and the food service sector. And the most recent regulations also include a zero waste certification and a label. So what about California? California has followed the French example, and it's now a model for other states in the US. A recent law called Senate Bill 1383 was voted in 2020, and it requires businesses to donate their food to a food recovery organization. It applies to large supermarkets, wholesalers, and food service operators. And in 2024, it will apply to large restaurants, hotels, health facilities, and also large venues and events. The main difference with the French law is that it's implemented and enforced directly by local jurisdictions. So they do outreach to businesses to make sure that they are compliant, and they go check that businesses have written agreements with food recovery organizations, and they track the quantities that are donated. And each county has to make sure that there is enough capacity to recover the available surplus, and otherwise they provide funding to increase capacity, for example, grants for refrigerated trucks or storage. So is it a win-win solution? We have excess food on one side and people who need food on the other side. So redistributing excess through charitable organizations has been presented as a win-win, even win-win-win with the environmental, social, and economic dimensions. But my research revealed that the new regulations have pushed businesses to increase the quantities of donations and not so much to improve the quality. The food can be damaged or expired and also inappropriate in terms of taste and nutrition. For example, food insecure people do not necessarily want to eat hundreds of plain bagels or hundreds of cookies. And in practice, food assistance organizations often have to spend a lot of time sorting the food they receive, and they may even throw away or compost up to 20% or 30% of the food. An issue in France in particular is that donors receive high tax incentives for their donations and based on the quantities. So if the food is not suitable for the clients of food assistance organizations that recover this food, the businesses get indirectly paid with public money for the donations of surplus food that is, in the end, is not even eaten. And finally, food redistribution generates significant transportation and packaging impacts, and it's socially not the most appropriate form of food access. There were also more unexpected impacts of the growing attention to food waste. What I show in my book is that it has led to the creation of new organizations and businesses that revalue the surplus that previously was thrown away. So the fight against food waste has created a new market for surplus food. Some startups have specialized in the sales of products at a discount rate close to their expiration dates, such as Too Good To Go, that has been very successful around the world. And some companies, for example, are developing the sales of the ugly fruit and vegetables or other products that previously didn't make it to the market because of their appearance. In the end, there is now a new form of competition and even tensions over accessing surplus food. The traditional circuits of food redistribution, like the food banks, they experience a negative impact of apps like Too Good To Go, because the stores try to sell the food as much as possible and as late as possible, and they only donate when the food is almost expired or at a lower quality. And on the other hand, the sales of the ugly fruit or vegetables, they generate competition with local community-supported agriculture boxes and local producers. These initiatives to resell surplus food have, in the end, disincentivized prevention. They paradoxically, they make it more profitable to overproduce and have surplus that can now be used rather than avoiding overproduction and surplus in the first place. So in terms of prevention, avoiding surplus, what can we do? Food waste is a systemic issue. So for example, supermarkets have significant power in the food system and can refuse orders from producers who then have to discard their products or sometimes don't even harvest it if it doesn't meet the strict requirements of retailers. Ideally, more local food systems with fewer intermediaries and more circular loops may generate less waste because there would be a closer relationship between producers and consumers. It would also prevent retailers from pushing surplus onto their clients through promotional offers or advertising that make clients overpurchase. We also need a system with a more equitable food access or even a right to food instead of funding low-quality donations through tax incentives. Thank you very much for your attention today. If you want to hear more about food waste and the challenges and recent opportunities, I'm also organizing a roundtable tomorrow, July 12th at 7 p.m. with several actors involved in the fight against food waste, including Guillaume Garot, who wrote the regulation, and members of the Ministry of Agriculture and startup founders. I will also be giving a book presentation in Montpellier on the 19th and other events later on in Paris. So feel free to reach out. Thank you very much, and I hope to meet in person soon.